Shift Happens Podcast.
Welcome to the Shift Happens Podcast, where we explore the latest trends and technologies transforming the future of work. In this episode, we're back with a great discussion on digital transformation from a managed services provider's lens with Matthew Bookspan, CEO of Blacktip. Tune in as Matthew shares his unique perspective on how MSPs can empower organizations to achieve more with technology.
Shift Happens Podcast. Shift Happens Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of Shift Happens Podcast. And today we've got a good friend, great partner, and really just all around awesome human being, Matthew Bookspan. Hey Matthew, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tex. How you doing?
Fantastic. It's I can't believe it's almost spring,
I know. It feels like spring here. We're in Florida, so it's already like in the 70s and lovely, right? Although I'm pretty pale, I need to get some sun, but it's pretty nice.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know if you're really in Florida because it seems like you're indoors all the time.
Too much, sadly. Too much.
So where in Florida are you?
We're in Central Florida in the Orlando area.
So are you born and raised in Orlando area?
So I was born in Miami, but I was raised in California. So I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area and went to college out there, grew up out there, lived in the Silicon Valley and lived in the Silicon Forest, aka Seattle, and just spent a bunch of my time on the West Coast. And then we moved back as a family to Orlando in 2009. So been back 15 years. It's we're happy. It's a much better pace of life for us.
I mean, for sure. And would you say being out west kind of influenced you going into tech?
Oh yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I mean, when I started, I started at Berkeley in 1989. Yes, I am that old. And I mean, this is, here we are, we're only 5 or 6 years after really the revolution, right? And there was so much going on and so much activity. And I mean, I worked at a startup in 1990. I was a fourth employee of a little Apple-based startup out of Palo Alto, right? So I've been involved in this industry for a very, very long time. Love it. Just love it. Great people, great thoughts, really innovative ideas, constant change. You have to like that. You have to like living in ambiguity, right? To do what we do, right? Living in ambiguity is kind of like a component of our lifestyle. So I enjoy it. Not everyone does, but I do.
In that goes into the aspect of always learning, right? Like, especially just in the last 2 years, there's so much innovation, so much change. And I'm sure we'll talk about AI, but you have to constantly learn. Like, I feel like I don't know enough. There's always like this FOMO with me when I see an article, when I see a new innovation, I'm like, I need to get on that.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I even look at what's happened with Microsoft 365, even, the level of acceleration of new, right? This evergreen product that's a constant force, right? And being able to keep up, okay, what are the important things that we need to learn versus what are things that we can go ahead and sideline for now? But the problem is it's a flood. It's a flood of information, and being able to discern the relevant data, the relevant important features, and the relevant important concepts. It's a lot of work. I didn't realize how hard that part would be. Right?
But then your business, your job is to work with organizations throughout the United States, manage a lot of their 365 environment, give them guidance and give them advice. So how do you do that? On one hand, obviously we have to keep up with the trends, but on the other hand, how do you make sure the organizations you serve are maximizing their investments, but at the same time also be realistic and say, you know what, this thing is still too early. We'll let you know once you're ready for it.
So that's a great question, and there's many answers to that question. So first and foremost, we live in an agile mode. So we look at like a monthly sprint and we'll say, okay, this month we're going to improve this particular area of the platform. Okay, or this month we're going to train the client on this particular aspect of the platform. And when I say the platform, I mean Microsoft 365, and whether that is SharePoint, Teams, the desktop applications, collaboration, modern work, we do that. But then, with the influx of change that happens through the platform, to your point, we will sit there and prioritize and say, what are the important things we need to do right now? What can we wait on? Right? What makes sense to wait? And, and for example, I guess we'll go down the Copilot thing for a second. It took until this January before we could even realistically have a conversation with any of our clients about Copilot because licensing wasn't available to them. Right? Anyone under 300, right? We had 300 users where you had to wait. So we're just starting that dialogue. And I know we're going to dig in a little bit later on that. But the fact of the matter is, like, anytime there's a major sea change, right, we do have to stop and pause and say, okay, well, what are all the impacts here? And I think the most important thing is the user and training and understanding. Right. It's one thing that we can go configure all sorts of things all day long, right? We can make all sorts of magic happen for our clients. We can use the platform in lots of beautiful ways. However, how do we ensure that translates to something meaningful and purposeful for them, right? How are we doing something that, maybe we automated something, right? Or maybe we enhanced a security capability to improve their overall daily life. Those are the wins, like that. And you have to look at it that way, not in the, if you don't turn this feature on, boy, you're just not a good partner. It's like, well, actually you are. Maybe you're sparing them.
How do you walk that line, right? I'm sure you have customers saying, hey, I saw this on YouTube. It's really cool. I want to use it. Like, let's go.
We do, but what's funny, and maybe it's just Orlando and we're kind of the South, right? So I say this, with a little bit of deference, and that is, folks want to try things. We have some of our clients who are very forward-thinking, driving, hey, let's improve constantly. We have other clients who are more like, hey, we're good right now. We're not necessarily ready for a little more change, right? And we have, for example, some construction clients who, are only second above agriculture in terms of any type of technology adoption. So, that slows that pace a little bit. But then we've got some financial services clients who are like, more, like we need to take more advantage of these capabilities. We need to leverage the latest and greatest. We need to automate these capabilities. How about automating mail merge, which, by the way, is still one of the most frustrating things to do, right? There's a part of this where we also have to remember as technologists that just because something new comes out doesn't necessarily mean it's better. We have to question that ourselves. I mean, I've been through enough technology change over the last 30 years to see, okay, that is literally just a reinvention of what we had 10 years ago. And it might be 10% better, but everyone who's new to it feels like it's this amazing thing. It's like, it's just a little bit better than what we had.
And you bring up a very good point, right? And I've learned my lesson on this is, I think the key is, we need to meet people where they are, right? It's not right or wrong. Like, for example, when 365 first came out, then you have all these new workloads, Yammer, Team, SharePoint. I was like a collaboration Nazi. I'm like, okay, for company-wide communications, Yammer, Viva, Engage only. No, don't send me email, right? And then Teams is for this. That's good guidance, but in reality, doesn't really work that way. So we got to meet people where they are. So speaking of customers, what are the range of sizes of organizations you work with?
So I would argue, it's kind of funny. We have a really interesting blend of clients. So we have SMBs, we have mid-markets, and we have some larger enterprises. Okay. So we work with one client that's, I don't know, I guess, would you call it 2,000 to 2,500 user company? Is that still a medium-sized business, or would you categorize that as an enterprise, a small enterprise? I mean, Microsoft is always...
Yeah, depending their number, but you could say they're up there, right? They're above medium. Yeah.
So like in those environments, we co-manage, right? We work with corporate IT and we engage with them, and we generally handle a few specific tasks that they want us to do. In the mid-market space, it's kind of similar. These are the client sizes between, call it 100 and 300, right? Or maybe even 500. With those clients, we tend to partner with an internal IT, and we handle the platform. Like, we're doing the Microsoft platform for them because that's not their scope of skill sets, right? Like, we really can make a difference that way. For our SMBs, and call that in the range from 10 to 100, okay? I mean, at least for us, right? In which case we do it all. So, you're doing everything from the network to server infrastructure, if it exists, to collaborative software, training, security, you name it, help desk, like the whole thing. So preferred model is the mid-market. We tend to find that we can add the most value because really where we can train their user base on the platform, not just like, hey, we can control and manage the platform for you. We can actually train your users on the platform. So,
because I'm curious, right? I'm sure depending on the size, the type of industry they're in, their challenges vary, right? I mean, sure, like earlier we discussed change is one of the big things, but I'm sure there's different needs and requirements, for example, around security and governance and compliance, especially with a 365 platform. So maybe can you talk about like what are the patterns emerging with respect to what are their challenges and how you're helping them?
so it's interesting because governance is really, they come to us and say, what are the rules, right? We can then turn back to them and say, okay, what are the most important things to you, right? What do you really care about? And they'll say, we're not sure. This I think is really incumbent upon the partner, the technology partner, to be prescriptive, right? To say, okay, here's what we believe is the right thing based upon your business needs. Now, interestingly enough, most of Blacktip's clients, I mean, really, most of them are in a non-restrictive compliancy or compliance-like environment. Those, I mean, we do have a couple of dental offices that have HIPAA requirements. We have one financial services client that actually has FINRA, because not everyone in financial services has FINRA compliance. Like but it depends upon what they're doing. So, I mean, if you compare a hedge fund to a broker dealer, like those have very different, needs, right? As an example. So again, governance is really around best practices, what we believe is the right thing for them. And whether we look at, and sometimes we map that to maybe an existing platform, like and this kind of blends security. So CIS, version 8 or NIST, right? So we may look at it from that standpoint, help, again, be prescriptive and say, here's some behaviors that you can do and here's why. And then they can kind of turn the dial and say, here's what we are comfortable with, right? So you have that sort of flexibility. So again, back to compliance. Again, we don't really have a lot of restrictions there. So really it's a matter of, when you think of like, it's kind of funny because compliance and governance go together, especially in the platform, where we go and look at like data loss prevention policies, where we'll go and say, okay, hey, here's some best standard practices for you based upon, okay, maybe you're in construction or maybe you're in finance or maybe you're in hospitality, whatever the case may be, here's some of the things you can do. And then really from a security standpoint, we view secure score as a phenomenal metric to balance ourselves against, right? And how well can we perform against the secure score? And having a number in the mid-50s was reasonable. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that was okay, because now most of our tenants are upwards in the 70s. And that's based on it's tough to get to 100 unless you're like an E5 licensing, right? Like you've got to be, you have to have all those features to be able to enable those capabilities. Actually, it's really funny. So are you familiar with there's conditional access for blocking foreign, entities from trying to get
IP address. Yeah.
Exactly. So we've enabled all that. So it cracks us up because our clients have to come to us like, hey, I'm going on vacation. And it's like they have to let us know so that way we can allow their account to work to wherever they're going. Right.
And like they're in Mexico or somewhere, right? Or
you name it. And it's hilarious because it's like, it feels kind of big brother, but it's not like we care. It's like, but we have to protect your account. Like that is the purpose of what you are paying us to do that. So we look at it from that perspective. And it's a little bit funny because the employee's like, why do I have to tell these guys? Like,
where I'm going.
I was like, exactly. Why do they, like, what? I can't just go. I already told you what, you being their manager or whatever. They get it now. They understand what our role is in that, but still, it's a funny anecdote.
So you talk about best practice. So for our listeners, maybe can you share like, one or two best practice with respect to making sure they have a secure, healthy 365 environment?
Gosh. So, well, first of all, I think you should standardize on one of the security premise in terms of like whether you look at NIST or you look at CIS. I think you should pick one and try to achieve that within your environment, right? And then their environment. I think from a Microsoft best practices standpoint, you really need to leverage conditional access. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, I think our average tenant has anywhere between 13 and 15 conditional access policies. Okay. And by the way, they're not encumbered. Like we don't make it where the user still can't work, but what we're doing is we're still protecting them. Right. And I think that's really, really important. And I think that, something else is Microsoft makes it easy for us to manage these devices. They really do. As long as you're using, I think of it like as three umbrellas, right? You have modern work versus all the collaborative side. You have modern security, right, which is all of the Defender components, right? And then you got modern management. So you think of Intune, autopilot, deployment policies, profiles, like all that jazz, app deployment, all that, we're using that in the modern way. I mean, our clients are so appreciative because we've been using this stuff for over 6 years. So for them, it's like, oh, we have a new hire, a new computer. You can just ship it to their house, no problem. They'll just connect to their Wi-Fi and PC is complete. Have a lovely day, right? And I'm trivializing it a little bit, but you get the point, right? So from a best practice standpoint, leverage the platform. I firmly believe that. If I encourage any other partner out there, they should be leveraging the platform. It's to their benefit.
Do you utilize, or some of your customers utilize Purview for data loss prevention and labeling?
Yes. So we have Purview set up at all of our across all of our tenants on a DLP standpoint, and then now we're just about ready to deploy sensitivity labels across all the tenants. It's actually all built. It's all ready. It's just training. So, and we came up again, be prescriptive, right? Because you can create 1 billion labels if you want to, which is nuts, but you can. So we came up with a model. It's like, okay, just 3 labels. Keep it simple. That way. Because again, think of your audience, right? I'm going to come back to what you said earlier. I love it. Meet them where they are. So if you make it simple, they're ready and willing to adopt, right? It's all about friction. Like, how much friction am I creating in this process? So if I can reduce that friction, they're going to be more adaptable, more interested, and they understand the output, right? Okay, you created an input. Okay, here's my output. So we're super excited about that. I mean, we can't wait to get everybody fully loaded on that.
So certainly, Microsoft platform itself, right? You broke it down where modern work, modern management, modern security. There's a lot of good stuff. And I agree with you. A lot of people barely use 50% of the capabilities. Now, at what point do you recommend customers, or maybe it's the size or the industry, that, you know what, we're missing something with the Microsoft stack? Let's look into complementing technologies from the partner ecosystem. Do you have like a decision tree that goes there, or is it based on requirements?
Obviously, we're an AvePoint partner. And so to us, that's like a component of our offering, right? Like to us, like, hey, again, this goes to the prescriptive nature of what we do. Here is when it comes to a backup solution, when it comes to a management solution, a governance solution, we believe that AvePoint has built an amazing set of products. We've been an AvePoint partner for many, many years now. And we got on early because we saw the value early on compared to, especially the other offerings out there. So that was like, that's a easy stroke. Yep. Checkbox, done. On the other side of it, it's a little more case by case. So for example, where can we leverage, for example, we spend a lot of time looking at SSO. So for our clients who use third-party applications for effectively for their platforms. So like construction, big one in construction is Procore, right? That's a huge platform, right? So, okay, let's go enable SSO for them so they don't have to deal with multiple account management, right? How do we automate that? So we look at like those kind of things. We can easy integrations that give a lot of value, like this just a home run easy. Then we start looking at, okay, are there additional tools that can live on top of the platform? And maybe that's a Power App. Maybe that's a Power Automate Flow.
All Power Automate, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And we love Flow. I mean, oh my gosh, we've been able to do things for our clients like build out PTO capability, PTO reporting capability, approvals. It's easy stuff, and it works.
Or conference room scheduling. Yeah.
Oh yeah, easy stuff, and they love it. It's like we look at them, we'll go and say, okay, what paper process are you dealing with right now that's cumbersome? Okay, well, what if we could make that go away? They're like, yes, please, more, please, and ta-da, here it is. 6 weeks later, we built you something that you can test against. And then once they give us their buy-in, all right, we go to that level of, okay, how can we build on top of the tools that you're already paying for? How can we leverage that further?
Exactly. It's essentially do new with less, right? Like instead of buying more. Yeah.
Yes.
And especially now, enter Copilot, right? Because I can see the benefit not only of Copilot for your customers, but even for you. I mean, talk about Power Apps and Power Automate. I've been playing with Copilot the last couple of months, and I can go to Power Apps, say, hey, build a website that does this, that, the other, and boom, right? Now, it's not going to be the final product, but it does the first draft for me. And I think that right there is a major game changer. Creating a document, PowerPoint slide, it's great, But then when you go to these advanced capabilities that AI can help you with, it's just going to change how we work.
The two apps that I receive the most value when using Copilot were Teams. Using Copilot in the summarize feature is fantastic. A long thread where you got all these opinions and people expressing themselves and a lot of nonsense. I don't want to read through all that. Ting, click the button, tell me the answer. Thank you so much. Now I can go and move about my day. Okay. I don't receive, compared to many people, I don't receive that much email. But if you look at our clients who receive hundreds of messages a day, to be able to filter through, oh my gosh, that would be life-changing for them. The next one is Teams. And when you look at, now granted, you have to almost combine Copilot with Teams Premium. So you get like the best of both worlds.
The meetings,
the meeting. But having, what I really love about what Copilot does from a meeting is it tells me who is upset, who is happy. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
All the sentiment.
Oh, sentiment. It's awesome.
Sentiment,
yeah, it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. And to see that kind of like, oh my gosh, this happened. And I remember that, like, because you will walk away from a meeting and maybe you remember someone expressing themselves would be the way I'll say it. Or maybe you don't, like maybe just kind of brush it off. But the nice thing is that Copilot will give you that sense of, okay, here's really what happened. And it's like, wow.
And is it based on, because I haven't used that feature, is it based on voice or the words or
tone? It actually picks up on tone and facial expression.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's impressive. That's impressive.
Okay. Right. It's so different in ChatGPT, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, there's one key difference. At least I own my data. So when I ask questions of it, like that's probably one of the most important things we have to remember with Copilot over ChatGPT, right? I own my data. Right. It's not going out to the world. So.
Well, speaking of data, right? So think about what the potential pitfalls of Gen AI, especially as customers start adopting it, like Copilot. What areas do you think that it's like, danger, Will Robinson, like you got to get ahead of this, especially for your customers?
So first of all, basics. If you're using a tool like SharePoint or OneDrive, boy, you better have your permissions set up correctly. Like that's like baseline.
That's
like
right.
That's like table stakes.
You go like,
right?
what was Matthew Bookspan's bonus last quarter?
Right, exactly. So you better at least number one have your permissions set up correctly. Then with the advent of Copilot, you have the ability, I don't know if people know this or not, but you have the ability to actually exclude SharePoint sites from Copilot. Okay, you can do that. Okay, so if there are things you don't want available at all from the semantic index, you can close it off. So that's a big piece too. I think the next major one is, where is your data going? Okay, so especially if you're using OneDrive and SharePoint, where did you share that data? Do you remember? Do you have old crufty stuff? Did you not put in the right governance in the first place to make sure the links expire after a period of time?
I mean, how, like if I share a Word document with you, Matthew, I don't know if you shared it with somebody else. I don't, right?
Well,
or you shared it externally, yeah.
How about one of my favorites? Do you enable anyone links? Right? Like, do people in SharePoint, like, when you have your choices, okay, how do you want to share this link? And anyone, like, do you leave that?
Correct.
Do you leave that enabled? Right? Because when you do, anyone, I mean, literally anyone has that file. So, that's been a big training for our clients to understand that, hey, we don't want to do this, and here's why. As convenient as it might be, it's bad practice. So, but I think, again, so you're looking at, what is being shared. This is where, for example, like AvePoint policies and insights comes in really handy. Okay, let me go take a look and see, from an insight standpoint, where is all the data being shared? How can I report that back to my client? Say, here's the risks. Here's what we need to go clean up. And then, hey, by the way, not only the stuff you have shared, here's the sensitivity of the stuff you have shared, right? I mean, phenomenal tool to understand what's out there. So, when you think about Copilot, again, think of governance itself, because how do I really ensure that I'm protecting the data, right? The data, because it's not just discovery, to your point of, hey, can I go find out what the budget was? Can I go find out what Matthew made last year? Hey, where's the P&L for this particular group? Whatever the case may be.
Or this one, list all the files I have access to with the word password. Try that. Try that.
Right.
It works.
I'm curious about all the performance reviews available that are publicly available, right? Like, let me go see how everyone's doing, right? So dangerous stuff. So this is where you really do have to think through where your data lives, how it's structured, how you've secured it, right? So again, I talked about the basics of just permissions, but then you get to the point where you're dealing with sensitivity and ensuring that you're leveraging information protection and locking down that stuff that's really, really critical, right? And making sure that you are safe. I mean, that's a big, big win. And by the way, that isn't just a win for Copilot, that's a win for cybersecurity. If a file that's a classified file, for example, that's encrypted and manages to somehow get out, well, without the person who has permission to the file, it's a dead file. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? And people don't think about that, but you're actually really protecting the data. And I think that's a big deal.
In that, I think this is something people don't really think about, where AI is great, Copilot is great, but it relies on a foundational data. And you want your foundation to be robust, to be strong, to be secured, right?
Exactly. So I think, and then even from there, like, okay, you've done all that work. Okay, then there's this whole thing of, and this is a fun one because I learned this one not too long ago, prompt engineering. How do you train the users to properly create prompts to get results from Copilot? Because you can ask it all sorts of things and get no answer because you didn't prompt it right. Like the tool, like there's actually rules around this, right? I mean, it should be pretty free flowing. It should be simple. It's not, right? So I think that's like, even once you get it live and you're ready to go, but a part of your training, a part of your change management, a part of your process needs to be thinking through, okay, do we provide a cheat sheet, right? How do we make sure, once again, I'm going to use your word, meeting them where they are? How do you provide that content that says, okay, here are the rules. Here's how you stay in bounds, right? And here's what's going to get you out of bounds. So I think that's really, really important.
Well, Matthew, this has been an awesome conversation. We can keep going on and on.
We can.
This time next year, or when I'm down in Orlando for another event, we should definitely hang.
Please,
for real. Because
would love that.
I've seen you multiple times. We never hang out, right?
I know. Next time we will.
Yeah, but really grateful for the partnership. Really grateful for this conversation. And for folks that may be interested to learn more about you, learn more about what you all do, and potentially how you can help them, how can they best reach you?
Honestly, if you go to our website, so www.blacktipit.com, we have a contact form. Reach out. It's the easiest way. Our phone number's there. Call us. Whatever you want. Like, that's the easiest way.
And people can slide you a DM on LinkedIn, right?
They can slide me a DM on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Matthew. And
thank you, Dex.
Hopefully we'll get to see each other soon. All right.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. It's wonderful.
Shift Happens Podcast.
Thanks for listening. A huge thanks to Matthew Bookspan for an enlightening look at digital transformation from an MSP perspective. From stories directly from Blacktip's experience with their customers to security guardrails for new innovations like AI, Matthew covered a lot of practical ground today on how to be a better technology partner for organizations. Hopefully, you leave this episode feeling empowered, not overwhelmed by the pace of technology change. If you like today's episode, subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.
Shift Happens Podcast. Shift Happens Podcast.